this panel is all about maximizing brain health and longevity. Very sadly, I don't have a magic pill to give you that means that you will go home smarter or with a longer life. But we can promise to shed light on the topic at the very least. And joining me to do that is Anastasia Koroleva, a tech entrepreneur and former M&A attorney who joined the ranks of the ultra-high net worth with her first 9-digit business sale 13 years ago. Since then, she has sold 3 more companies. Today, she is the host of the Exit Paradox podcast, which caters to post-liquidity founders. She's also a member of Tiger 21, a private members network open to individuals with assets of at least $20 million. Dr. Antoinette Saracen is the Director of Biomolecular Restoration, Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine at the Kusnacht Practice, the world-leading medically licensed private clinic in Switzerland offering 100% tailored treatment programs. Dr. Antoinette oversees specific longevity programs, among them the Cognitive Blueprint, which provides individuals with a customized evaluation by a team of renowned medical professionals, neuroscientists, and seasoned experts to produce customized longevity strategy for the brain. And Dr. Paul Ettlinger is a founder and medical director of the London General Practice, a Harley Street clinic offering a comprehensive service from initial GP appointments to referrals to an international network of specialists for onward care. The practice, which counts royalty and CEOs among its patients, provides health screenings based on the latest evidence-based guidance. And the point about evidence-based guidance is going to be very important to us today, I feel, because brain health is a field that, while we're understanding more about the brain, there's lots of wiffle waffle, to use a scientific term, out there, and we're going to try and cut through that for you today. So, Dr. Antoinette, we have an increasingly thorough understanding of how the brain works. We know that lifestyle factors such as diet and physical activity can have an impact on our brain function. So we know there are levers we can pull to make a difference. We know it is possible to take action to improve the performance of our brain. Do you think that's a fair assessment of where we are? And what are the limitations in terms of what we know at the moment?
Indeed, we know quite a lot nowadays. We understand the structure and we understand the functioning of the brain. And we also understand quite well what are the root causes, the risk factors for boosting brain age, its decline and onset of diseases. And we also can measure nowadays and treat and prevent these risk factors. So this is quite positive news. The only thing is, it's important to get an insight as early as possible, because things go wrong in our metabolism decades before first signs of cognitive decline or brain fog or memory loss or struggling with focus. And when there is a disease developed, like dementia or Alzheimer's disease or another, it gets more challenging, because nowadays medication do not show yet satisfying success for treatment. So the earlier we start in looking in all these risk factors which trigger brain age, the better we prevent and the better we keep up health extension and longevity.
Thank you for that. So today we're going to start by talking about the demand that's there for this sort of treatment, the techniques that might be available, and hopefully some habits and techniques that people might start trying at home that we can think about practically. Anastasia, you're a part of the ultra-high net worth community and have built a network of fellow post-liquidity founders through your podcast and your other work. Have you witnessed a growing interest in this area?
Absolutely, yes. And we are basically talking about people who are winning the money game exactly because they're paying a lot of attention to their brain health. So what we are aiming for are essentially 3 things. First of all, we're data-driven control freaks. So we want to know exactly what's happening at any moment of time. So diagnostics is extremely important. Second, we are very, very scared of these diseases. So early detection of brain disease is extremely important, and we want the best of the world specialists developing a highly personalized plan for us to avoid those diseases in the future. And then we want to optimize our brain performance for exactly the goals that we have. And this is where it gets interesting, because the ultra-high net worth community is not homogeneous. In terms of our goals, we can roughly divide it into two groups, pre-money and post-money. And the needs and interests of those groups are very, very different. So pre-money people are all about wealth creation. So we want to optimize our brain for things like productivity, efficiency, creativity, resilience. Now, post-money people are completely different. We feel we have enough. We genuinely feel we have enough. So we are no longer motivated by wealth creation. We move into a different kind of motivation. We have this desire to build deeply fulfilling, meaningful, impactful lives. So what do we want from our brains at that point? We want to be able to feel content. It's extremely hard. It's the opposite of what we've been doing before. So contentment is extremely important. Then longevity. We are finally having the luxury of time and money to focus on longevity. And the third thing is a different kind of thinking. It's crystallized intelligence. It's basically thinking deeply and slowly and connecting deeply to who we are, answering existential questions, philosophy, spirituality. And then there is a very particular and very important group, a tribe that I belong to and care so much about. It's business founders who sold their business recently, and they are now facing usually an existential crisis, a lot of psychological and mental health issues, which come from the fact that our transition from pre-money to post-money is very sudden. So these people have a desperate need to process all these psychological challenges like loss of identity, loss of purpose, loss of meaning, relationship structure. And what exacerbates that greatly for this particular group is the fact that we are statistically, even before our exits, are much more likely to have serious mental health issues anyway. In fact, we're twice as likely to be hospitalized for serious mental health conditions. We're twice as likely than the general population to commit suicide, 3 times as likely to suffer from addiction, and 10 times as likely to suffer from bipolar disorder. So basically, if you're a brain health professional or you serve our community in any other capacity, it is extremely important to understand what it is that motivates each of these 3 groups and what it is we actually expect from our brain and from all the professionals that help us.
Thank you so much for that helpful outline. Antoinette, does that align with the requests that you receive from your patients?
Yes, very interesting. You know...
if you wouldn't mind just using...
Pardon.
Yeah.
Yes, I was fascinated by your input here. That's exactly what we see, you know. Thanks to Kusnacht Practice, also long historic in treatment of addiction and psychiatric diseases, we got very specialized in this brain health and brain health extension as a second step also after treatment of such diseases. So our doctors are pioneers or forerunners in this field. However, it's not only the brain health and brain longevity. Our clients, they look also into goals like feeling physically fit, energetic, and in shape, and free of pain and disability, but also mental strength, but also fulfillment, happiness, spirituality. These are all aspects we take into consideration to support the overall holistic health extension and longevity. So not only the brain, but body, brain, and mind.
So we have highly motivated, ultra-high net worths who are seeking treatment, but of course the danger is that they might fall into the wrong hands, and where do you begin with this? Paul, would you mind talking a little bit about the science-backed screenings that are available at the start of this process?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I think one has to start, and I think you start as early as you can for screening, because actually, if you have a head injury as a child, that might well affect you in later years, and that's quite important because actually you can help to prevent. I mean, I'm sort of reminded of Cher's I want to turn back time. We can't turn back our chronological age, but we can help to turn back our biological age, and that's the risk assessment that Antoinette's discussing. And I think it's very important. You've got to also look at your physical, how physically fit you are as well. So physical fitness equates with mental fitness as well. So I think it's very important to have a good, ethical, clinical governance-based screening program. And you start screening everything. The good news is that cardiovascular risk actually equates with neurological and dementia risk. So in fact, all our preventative regimes for cardiovascular risk have actually helped to have a reduction in dementia over the years in Western countries, not in the poverty-stricken countries. So I think that's really good news. So the statins, looking at risks, exercise, looking at keeping people active. There's a wonderful study, I think, in Finland in 2015 called the Finger Study, and it actually assessed patients with giving them input, looking at their exercise, looking at their cardiovascular risk factors, and actually that showed that there's a 25% reduction in that group against those who had no intervention at all in dementia. There was also a study about food. There's a mind diet, which is very equivalent to the Mediterranean diet. And actually that very much showed, and it's to do with phenols, it's to do with omega-3s, and that actually prevented or helped to prevent dementia. So I think go and have a good, we're at the London General Practice, we've got clinical-based, evidence-based screening programs. You don't want to do everything, because if you do everything, you won't know where you are. You've got to focus on the issues that actually confront the patient, and that's really important.
Thank you. And at the Kusnacht Practice, you take that one step further with the Biomolecular Restoration Cognitive Blueprint Program, which I know is led by Dr. Jean-Marc Sobczyk. Can you tell us a little bit about what that does? And maybe in terms of patients who want to be proactive, perhaps they haven't noticed anything wrong per se, but they want to take proactive steps for the future.
Yes, this program allows us to give an in-depth, unique insight in the status of our brain health, our biological age, our cognitive functions, but also risk factors and predispositions for brain aging. So it's an in-depth testing part is included, of course, in this program, where we look, first of all, have a general medical checkup, which is important as well, to exclude any also somatic diseases which influence the brain health. And then we go in depth on specific biomarker for brain health. We include also the toxic body burden, because you may have heard that toxins, not only environmental toxins, by the way, also alcohol is a toxic for the brain, but any environmental toxins like pesticides, plastics, mold, mycotoxins. So we analyze over 200 to 300 toxins affecting also brain health. But on the other hand, also biomarkers for sugaring of your cells. So the sugar metabolism is very important. Inflammation, oxidation. Also in our brain, we have now testings. We can see into the situation in the brain. Also thanks to volumetrics or imaging, visualization techniques. So we use also specific MRIs combined with brain key, a tool based on artificial intelligence, which allows us with a non-invasive, non-radioactive tool to get an insight in our brain concerning the volumes of different parts. You may have heard also about the hippocampus as an important part in development of cognitive decline, but not only the size, also get an insight in the blood flow and the drainage of the brain, and also of myelinization, the protective layers of every brain cells. So getting an insight by imaging, but also by biomarkers we have, and of course other assessment on cognitive capacities, on sleep, on lifestyle aspects, gives us a very deep insight on where a person, an individual stands concerning his biological age of the brain, but also biological age of the body. And based on this multi-branch diagnostics, our expert doctors, and we have a doctor team per client, who defines then and personalized an entirely tailor-made program based on different treatments to boost delaying the aging process or reverse the aging, bringing the biological age down based on specific supplementation, micronutrient supplementation, infusions, but combined often also with innovative new treatment which are relevant, like the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, in a personalized protocol combined with the infusion, with infrared sauna. But what is also very important, and thanks to our psychiatric team and psychologists expert, is how we deal with stress, stress resilience, how is our inner dialogue with ourselves. Because if we have this sabotaging inner dialogue, it has an effect on cellular level on aging, on promoting aging. So stress resilience is a very important aspect. Value work, why do we do what we do? Why do we force ourselves to do what we do, which is even not what we want to do? So that is especially important aspects to include as well are included in our programs, of course, and habit building. Still, what we live every day, fixed rituals are so crucial.
Well, I was going to jump in there because I think, you know, some people who are fortunate will be able to go to the Kusnacht Practice maybe and enjoy one of these entirely personalized programs. But for those of us who are maybe sitting here dreaming of the Swiss clinic treatment and won't be able to go in the near future, what are some behaviors and habits, as you're saying, these sort of consistent changes that we can all make? I know it's difficult without knowing an individual, but if there was some top tips perhaps that each of you would say if we wanted to start improving our brain health and longevity, where would we begin? Perhaps with Paul?
Well, I think exercise is one of the very first fundamental things that we can look at. And I think as long as we keep exercising every day, if we can, or 3 times a week, that certainly is going to help to protect the brain. It'll help to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is a very big problem with the brain. In fact, we can start to measure inflammation. There's a substance called interleukin-6, which we can look at, but it's still in the research phases. But we can actually decide, and interleukin-6 will actually tell us, help to know whether there's actually going to be dementia approaching. We can, the mind diet, or which I mentioned, the Mediterranean diet is actually one of the best things, and maybe even a glass of red wine. The sort of grape, the red grape, actually contains substances which will actually help against the inflammation in the brain. So I think we can do all of these things to actually look at these things.
Does it matter which type of exercise we do? Shall we all be signing up to one class, or can we do whatever keeps us active?
I think aerobic exercise. We want cardiovascular exercise. We want to reduce the lipids. We want to look at the low lipids as well. All of those things would be very beneficial.
And Antoinette, I feel like you weren't maybe quite sold on the glass of red wine that Paul was tantalizing us there with, so would love your opinion.
Maybe concerning alcohol, maybe I would recommend the resveratrol as a supplement, because you need to drink a lot.
Yes.
And then you get maybe more of toxin. Alcohol is a toxin.
Sorry, everyone.
And for the physical activity, of course, I really appreciate your input. And coordinate, exercise which includes also some coordination, dancing and these kind of sports, combining the aerobic part, but still a sort of coordination has shown significant effect also in elderly homes to improve some symptoms of cognitive decline. I have also one very simple advice, is simply stop snacking. Don't eat between the meals. I agree with anti-inflammatory diet, of course, the Mediterranean diet, but you benefit so much with not eating between the meals. Simply, even if you stick to 3 meals and don't go in intermittent fasting with 2, already with 3 meals, you do not eat between 4 hours between the meals, you gain so much benefits for your longevity. And on top of that, you stay in shape and you have no problems with weight management on top.
So for those of us who might be smarting a bit at the idea of not snacking at all, what are the benefits of leaving that gap between our meals? What's the difference between, grazing all day versus 3 set meals?
We heard a lot about inflammation, and inflammation can also be linked now with glucosylation. Glucosylation is sugaring of our cells, if I may say. And when we start to snack or graze, there are peaks of sugar coming up and down and up and down, and this favors the inflammatory process in our body and sugaring. And it also favors, by the way, cravings and feeling much more to eat more and more and more. And as we know, and that's maybe also one aspect to highlight, is the brain does not like ups and downs of sugar, likes a continuous flow of. So it can also even trigger moodiness and moodiness, being angry and so on. That's why. And then there is something on a cellular level. When we do not snack and have long fasting period, it triggers some enzymatic and complex molecular processes on a cellular level to boost rejuvenation and to boost apoptosis of cells, means a self-driven suicide of cells which do not work properly anymore. So you boost these effects by fasting period. And that's where also it comes to intermittent fasting, that you fast, maybe you skip this breakfast and you only have lunch and dinner. So there are lots of benefits from anti-aging, rejuvenation, weight management, mental balance, and simply keep really your weight without struggling on diets when you are at the table. Because when you are at the table, you satisfy yourself, you have a proper meal, and you brush your teeth, and you are... And by the way, you save some money by dentist.
As if all those benefits weren't enough.
Health, yeah. And then dental health is again important for brain health. Because we know that inflammation in our mouth, gums, teeth, can trigger also dementia. There have been seen that certain bacteria are also found in the brain, and we know infections, immunity, inflammation are such important aspects when we talk about brain health.
And, sorry, Paul?
Well, no, I think I was just also going to add in sleep. Sleep is very important, and it's a circadian rhythm, but is also, during sleep is when actually the brain is cleansed. The garbage mechanisms in the brain actually get rid of the toxins, and actually that is the time when it actually happens the most. So I think sleep is very, very important, not with sleeping tablets, because those actually can be dumbing and actually cause dementia or contribute to dementia. So we're talking about natural sleep. And if you suffer with sleep apnea, I think that's very important to be to be treated and to be diagnosed, because actually sleep apnea also causes a lot of increased cognitive decline.
And Anastasia, are there anything you'd like to add?
But I guess not anymore.
I'm afraid none of us are grazers after this session, Anastasia.
So sleep is extremely important. Exercise, especially being outdoors, for me, extremely important. But also my husband and I decided to stop drinking alcohol about a year ago. I never drank much, but nothing happened for about 2 months. And then I realized that I had so much energy. Like you see, I can't really sit still. I need to jump and talk. I have so much energy, and I could not deny that that was the only change that I made that could explain it. And it continues since then for 10 months and like increases, if anything. So I think that is extremely important. But also meditation for me works. Again, I'm one of those people who just want to do too much, think too much, and it calms me down and it helps me get clarity. I have no idea really what the science is behind it, just very, very generally, but it definitely works for me very well.
That's an interesting idea about waiting 2 months until you see benefits of something. I feel like there might be a common trait in people who are high achievers or entrepreneurs and in this sort of group of people that they're used to seeing results very quickly. Is that an issue that you've seen arise when people seek treatment? Paul?
Yes, I think everyone wants to know the diagnosis yesterday. That's for certain, and I think that's. I think that one has to be, obviously, if you're having a diagnosis, you have to be realistic about when that diagnosis is going to be made. And that can only be done when you've done the right tests. So, I mean, certainly at our practice, we're able to arrange tests almost immediately. We have a lot of visitors coming in from abroad who only give you 2 days or 3 days to actually plan their investigations and then actually help them with the treatments. I mean, from the point of view of brain health, I don't think one can expect very quick diagnoses, and I don't think they should be quick. I think they need to be considered, because I think you need to also have a neuropsychological assessment that can take time. I think if you're going to have scans, you need to have, as Antoinette said, you've got to have the right scans. I mean, you can have scans that show the anatomy, so they show that there's abnormalities in the brain, but you can have a very bad-looking scan and someone who functions very well. So they can have brain resilience, so that there isn't actually, at that stage, a problem. So if you do a lot of tests and you have these tests and you look at the results, if you don't consider them, you might actually give the wrong diagnosis.
Just to pick up on something quickly, that idea of having brain resilience sounds very attractive. Is it something we can build up, or is that something that's within you?
I think it is something that you can build up. If you take the factors that we've discussed, you can actually help to give your brain resilience. Being mentally active is extremely important. I think it's been shown that if you're socially isolated, you can lead more to cognitive decline. So you can help yourself by being active and keeping active, as with the sleep, and with the sleep. And I think when we were talking about alcohol, I was talking about the skin of the grape, not necessarily drinking it.
I believe also, of course, stress resilience, also when the brain is well fueled, gets the right vitamins and minerals and certain fatty acids, also very important. Also, already by this, you get a better stress resilience. And then the behavior and the behavior, the brain, as we know now, we are not trapped with the brain we've got. We can make it work better. But we need to set up also fixed rituals, concerning the exercise or concerning the diet or the meditation. And some people, they get more the benefit of a meditation by gardening or have a meditative workout and do not necessarily do the classical meditation or yoga. Important is to find also these rituals. Also, first of all, get an insight, where are my risks? And then get a tailored program with these measurements, which are also taking into consideration preferences, environment, the context we live in, to make it realistic, to have it as a consistent ritual, like brushing your teeth and taking your shower.
Please.
I just wanted to mention, I feel very strongly about expectations of quick results for 2 reasons. First one, you mentioned that entrepreneurs tend to have it, but it's my observation that it is exactly when you learn to switch to not expecting quick results is when you become successful, and that makes all the difference. But the second reason that's relevant for this panel is it really pains me to see how many people in our community, they have this desire to take care of their brain, but then they jump on some kind of band-aid, some simple idea, and they say, okay, tick, I've solved my problems, I'm following this idea. And the problem is exactly the fact that they stopped working on the problem. They moved it away, and they focused on something else, and the problem is still there.
And I think what is important is the needs. They change also from the phase of life you are in there. What you need in your 30s is maybe different, or is not maybe, is different in your 40s, or when you are in your mid-50s or 60s. It's also important to adapt and to get a new insight. You retest, you get a new insight and a new tailored approach. So it's not, I found now this, and then I stick to this for all your life.
But I also think that we've got to... sorry.
Oh, don't worry. I was actually just going to use the opportunity to say I just have one more question before we open 2 questions, which is to ask about the future, where we're going with this, which I feel ties in quite nicely because, you know, habits take a long time. You know, consistency is consistent. So we have to be doing something forever to see the benefits of them. Will there be a time where there is a magic pill, do you think, or a magic microchip or similar? Paul, sorry to cut you off.
Well, yes, I think there will. And I think it's interesting. There's a very old-fashioned medication for diabetes called metformin. And interestingly enough, it's shown that if you feed more metformin to fish, fish learn. And the fish that had metformin learnt and went the same pathway that they went, which they didn't do, to those fish who didn't have the metformin. So metformin is something that's coming very much on the horizon. I think it's very interesting. It's probably to do with the lowering of glucose into the brain, but there isn't any very hard research into that yet at the moment. Maybe Antoinette can tell us more if there is, but I don't think there's any hard research. But it's very much, and actually amongst my patients, everyone is beginning to ask for it now, even though they're not diabetic. So it's something that is very interesting. So that's something. There's NAD+, which is an antioxidant, which I know is a very beneficial substance, which I think the Kusnacht Clinic is working is working very hard in providing to patients. But again, that the hard science is still needing to be explained. So I think the answer is probably yes. But what we have to remember is that originally the brain probably in the Renaissance, we died at 30, 40. So the brain has got to also adapt to this. We didn't have social media. We didn't have text, my phone. We didn't have social media at that time. So the brain's got to adapt. We've got to adapt. But we've got to actually do it slowly, as you say. I think if we do it quick, we're going to make some terrible mistakes.
Antoinette?
I'm from Basel, and and there's lots of pharmaceutical companies. I know Novartis, and they are all looking into this field of finding this wonder pill, which gives a cellular rejuvenation, daily almost. But this is not for tomorrow. This is certainly not for tomorrow. All these supplements, NAD+ and others, they support what we know from the pathways of aging, how to delay them, because we understand the aging as a disease quite well nowadays. It's the mother disease of all the civilization disease coming up later on. But this pill does not exist yet. And now we try with different tools we have, supplements, infusions, and as I mentioned already, also intermittent fasting, or these are all targeting the pathways of aging. What I see is certainly in near future is now the development on digital health, wearables, to track your sugar. For example, sugar monitor is quite common now, 24/7, but track more and more your sleep, your other aspects, and then at the end we need still to, I would say, focus on what we know works well, is all these lifestyle aspect, diet, exercise, sleep, where we know we can delay the onset of aging, or delaying the aging process, and have a better life, health extension.
Entrepreneurs generally are independent thinkers, and oftentimes quite arrogant. So there are lots of biohacking communities that I'm a member of, even though I'm not a biohacker, really claiming that they found some of these drugs all by themselves because doctors are too narrow-minded. But at the same time, there is another trend which is becoming more and more powerful in our community, which is a growing interest in very ancient traditional medicine, whether it's Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, and people, especially those I mentioned who have the time and money to do that, they go and they explore and they want to find those golden nuggets of wisdom there.
Thank you so much. I do have more questions to ask, but I can see on Slido, in case anyone would like to submit this way, it's sli.do.com, and then you can use the hashtag Spears500Live. But we have 2 questions, so I'll start with these, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But please do submit if you'd like. How can you prioritize brain health in a busy or pressurized schedule? So maybe this is someone who feels like they don't have time in their day to prioritize themselves. They have to move quickly, constantly. How can you still prioritize your brain health in that scenario? Paul?
Well, I think that's always, priority is always a question, isn't it? I think actually what Antoinette said is if you've got a wearable, that starts the introduction to it, because it's easier to have the information from the wearable. But I think priority is probably more of a question for our entrepreneur, because how does she prioritize? Because I'm thinking that it is a question of personal choice. And I think if you're told that actually you are at risk, if you have the gene, there's an apolipoprotein E4 gene, which means you're at an increased risk of dementia. If you have 1 copy of it, you're about ×3 risk of getting dementia. If you have 2 copies, you're about ×8. Now, if you knew you had that gene, maybe you would prioritize.
What I think is important, it does not need a lot of efforts to have a good success, Already no snacking. You can do as busy as you are. You even save time. So I don't want to talk about it. And also already 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an aerobic workout is not a lot of investment for a huge return of investment. So it's not that you need to go 4 times to gym, 2 hours and do this and that and this. Not necessary. If you get an insight where you stand, what are your personal risk factors, and then get a very focused, personalized a recommendation or plan, if I may say, that does not take a lot of time. Or every day, 5 minutes brain training, 5 minutes every day bring already a benefit.
And what sort of brain training can we do in 5 minutes?
There are specific programs,
Okay.
tools based on neuroscience.
I think that it's very easy to prioritize things that feel pleasant. And if we develop habits, and Antoinette mentioned it before, habits feel pleasant. So we want to go to the gym, we want to go for a walk, we want to meditate because we feel very good. So I would definitely rely on the power of habits. It does take time to set it up, and it can take years to set up every habit one at a time, but it works.
And when you do it, when you focus on where there is also your personal pleasure and you feel this I could like with time, it's not so difficult to set up new rituals. But you have to consider your personal preferences, what you like and what you don't. Some people, they do not like yoga, and they force themselves because they read it's so healthy. But if you don't like it, you probably would have a better effect walking your dog.
How about if someone likes, chocolate and red wine?
Yeah. There's always a timing. If you combine sweet with a meal where you ate some proteins and certain other fibers, you do not get this peak afterwards. So again, instead of eating every hour a small piece of chocolate, rather enjoy it as a dessert fully, and the metabolism reacts differently the way you eat.
I think it also brings us back to that expectation of quick results, because, for example, what happened with alcohol with me and my husband was that now we have so much energy, it feels much more pleasant than drinking alcohol. So if I'm tempted and I just think, oh no, I'm going to lose that amazing pleasure of feeling so much vitality and energy, I'm not going to do that.
We have a question here for Anastasia, which is, why would someone who successfully sold their business be unhappy?
Oh, wow, okay.
So I feel like you're acting as the mouthpiece for
absolutely, it's a
exited...
very good question, and I'll try to answer quickly because it's not necessarily brain health. But essentially what happens is that when we sell a business, we expect, due to a number of reasons, that happiness will happen. So we think this happily thereafter happens when we finally sell our business for a lot of money. But what happens is the reality is very different, because we sell our purpose, our relationships, our meaning, everything. We sell it for money. We basically destroy our whole Maslow pyramid. We get that money in return. We look at it and like, okay, now what? I don't have all those things. So what happens is that it then takes a lot of time. Actually, statistically, it takes about 10 years to rebuild your life back with all the money you have to the point of relative happiness.
Thank you for that.
We see this quite daily in our practice. People come with private chat, but they ask me, can you put something in your tailored formulation for happiness? It's also the purpose of life. And again, I come back to the aspect of value work. Why do we do what we do? And discover, other aspects in life which triggers fulfillment and happiness.
But this is also the same with anyone who's retiring. If you don't have your own business, but you're a CEO or in a company, you don't want to go from being extraordinarily busy to absolutely nothing. And this actually does have to do with brain health, because you don't want to have nothing to do and then and maybe have even more social isolation afterwards as well. So actually it is related.
And in fact, this is very important. We have to keep the brain active and find new activities.
Sorry. There's lots of questions, which is wonderful. So thank you, everyone. But if we can maybe just keep these next responses brief, and then hopefully we can get through a couple more before we finish. Do apps like Lumosity or Elevate help, like brain training apps that you can get on your phone? Or I guess an equivalent might be like, would doing my Sudoku and my crossword, is that going to benefit me? Or does it need to be something more profound when you're talking about 5 minutes of brain training?
This can be certainly one aspect. We also include it in our aftercare programs. It does not replace everything we discussed now, like exercise, diet. However, there are tools based on neuroscience and experts in brain health that with such brain training, even 5 minutes per day, yes, has a positive outcome together in the integrative approach.
Paul?
Well, definitely. I mean, they're keeping the brain active, so even 5 minutes a day will be very helpful. As Antoinette said, it isn't the be-all and end-all, and it's not that quick fix, but it's helpful.
Well, I have 2 teenagers and a 5-year-old at home. I don't need any additional brain stimulation.
You need some brain quiet time, maybe.
Exactly. Meditation.
Yeah. Oh no, not the wine. I feel like wine. So just very quickly, before we finish, speaking of alternative medicine, what are your thoughts on the medical benefits of drugs such as cannabis, LSD, mushrooms, etc.? Paul, I feel like that was a wry smile at the end.
I think that there is no real medical benefit to these in the terms of brain health. I think in terms of brain health, they can only be toxins.
Sure.
I think there are interesting insights now in psychedelics and psychotherapy under psychedelics. And that's a topic we at the Kusnacht Practice, of course, are looking into and implementing with our psychiatrists. So there are interesting outcomes.
It's a different subject rather than longevity.
Subject rather than the health, yes, okay. Well, I think that's all we have time for. So if you could please all join me in thanking our panelists.